light in heaven did not come from a sun or stars. It came directly from God, filling everything with his glory. And it was here that I was brought into life. I was not like the others. Among the countless hosts of angels, God made me the brightest. He called me Lucifer, the light bearer and the morning star. I was the first among the heavenly hosts, the crowning jewel of his creation. He adorned me with a beauty and brilliance that surpassed all others. My form reflected his perfection. My face shone like the dawn, and my voice was like a symphony of celestial harps. No angel could rival me in wisdom, in power, or in grace. And so God gave me a purpose that matched my splendor. I was the conductor of heaven's worship and the leader of the celestial choirs. I loved the role he entrusted to me, and I poured all of myself into fulfilling it with utmost devotion. Through my dedication, I sought to honor him, to reflect the gratitude I felt for being made so magnificent, so unique. Every act I performed was my way of offering back to him who had made me what I was. In those early days, I never desired more. I lived in harmony with the other angels. There were countless angels, a host too numerous to count. And yet, despite our differences, we were all bound by the same love. We moved as one, fulfilling our purpose in the grand design of the Almighty. There was no thought of self in my heart, no pride, no ambition. The songs we sang were pure and sincere, rising from the depths of our being. Each song was a tribute to the one who had created us out of nothing. But over time, something began to change. Even in the perfection of heaven, I could feel the weight of what I had been given. At first, it was nothing more than a faint thought, but it grew. Little by little, I began to believe that I was greater than the one who created me. And I asked myself, why must all glory belong to him? I was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. My light surpassed that of every angel. My voice commanded the choirs of heaven itself. And yet I was made to bow, to serve, to reflect, never to shine for my own sake. The first time those thoughts entered my mind, I managed to push them away, brushing them off as nothing more than a fleeting moment of vanity. But they lingered, like a seed sown in fertile ground, slowly taking root within me. No matter how hard I tried to cast out the troubling thoughts, they always found their way back to me. More and more, I found myself wondering, why should I always stand beneath him? Why should my greatness remain hidden, buried in the shadow of his throne? The thought grew bolder, louder. What had started as a whisper in my heart grew into a roaring conviction, and I began to see heaven as a cage that held me back from revealing the fullness of my own greatness. I was destined for more, I thought. I deserved more. In my mind, I began to see myself not as a servant of God, but as his equal, perhaps even his better. I believed I could rule better than the one who made me. The thought was thrilling. I imagined a throne for myself higher than his. I pictured all the hosts of heaven turning their adoration toward me. They would sing my praises, they would bow to me. The throne was my destiny, and I would stop at nothing to claim it. That is the curse of pride. It convinces you that the light you carry is your own, that you are greater than the one who gave it to you. Looking back now, I see it clearly. Pride is a slow poison. It begins sweet, almost imperceptible, but it spreads quickly, twisting everything it touches. It blinds you and distorts the truth. The beauty of heaven faded from my sight. All I could see was myself, and all I wanted was more. I was sure I'd climb to heaven and I'd set my throne over the stars of God. But what I didn't know at that moment was that my thoughts were the beginning of my fall. So my rebellion began with a plan. The whispers in my heart turned into action, and the action started with words. I knew that if I was to challenge the throne of God, I could not do it alone. Heaven was vast, and its hosts were countless. I would need allies, angels of power and authority, those who shared my discontent or could be persuaded to see things as I did. I began with quiet conversations, subtle and careful. I approached those I knew were closest to me in power and influence, angels who held dominion over realms of heaven. At first, I asked simple questions, planting seeds of doubt. Have you ever wondered why we, who are so magnificent, are bound to serve? Why our light must always reflect His and never shine for itself? Their answers varied. Some dismissed the idea immediately, their loyalty to the Creator unshaken. But others hesitated. They listened. They considered. I saw the flicker of something in their eyes, a curiosity, a recognition of their own strength. Those were the ones I pursued. I spoke of freedom, painting a picture of a new heaven, one where we, the brightest and most powerful, would no longer bow to anyone. The more I spoke, the more they listened. I appealed to their pride, their sense of worth. I reminded them of their splendor, their wisdom, their unmatched power among creation. And so, they began to abandon their proper dwelling, the places they were given in heaven, to join me in this vision of what could be. Angels of high rank, powers, dominions, and thrones began to see themselves not as servants, but as rulers in waiting. I saw it in their eyes when we spoke, a fire kindling that matched my own. They began to question, to dream of a heaven where their light would no longer be eclipsed by His. As my following grew, my words became bolder. I spoke openly of a new order, a kingdom where we would sit upon thrones of our own making. And it wasn't long before the murmurs became action. The angels who had once sung in perfect harmony with the Creator's will now turned their voices toward me. Their allegiance shifted from the throne of God to the vision I offered. A third of heaven's hosts joined my cause, angels of great beauty, wisdom, and strength, their wings ready for battle, their hearts burning with ambition. In secret, we prepared for what was to come. Our rebellion would not be a quiet act of dissent. It would be a war. I knew the cost, and so did they. But the promise of what we could achieve outweighed the risk. I organized them into ranks, assigning leaders to oversee the growing legions of angels who had aligned themselves with me. Together, we crafted a plan to challenge the very foundations of heaven. My betrayal was complete, and the stage was set for the greatest battle heaven would ever see. But the Creator was not silent. He spoke my name, His voice reverberating through the heavens, both patient and resolute. Lucifer, He said, turn back. There is no victory in this path, only destruction. His words struck like thunder, and for a moment, even the loyal angels seemed to pause. But I had made my choice. I raised my voice in defiance and declared that my will was my own. I would not bow, not to Him, not to anyone. Then came the command. From the throne, God called His loyal angels to stand against us. At their head was Michael, the leader of heaven's armies, small in stature but mighty in faith. Michael and his angels fought against us, and me and my angels fought back. The battle erupted with a fury that shook the very foundations of heaven. Light and fire filled the skies as swords clashed and wings beat with thunderous force. My followers and I fought with all the strength we could muster. Every blow we struck was driven by the belief that we were fighting for freedom, for a kingdom where we would no longer serve but reign. Michael, however, fought with a power beyond understanding. His sword seemed to cut through our ranks with unyielding force. Despite our strength, the tide of battle began to turn against us. Then came the decisive blow. Heaven's light surged with an intensity I could not withstand. I was struck down, and with me, the angels who had stood by my side. The fall was unlike anything I could have imagined. It was not a simple descent, but a complete severance from everything I had once known. The harmony of heaven, the radiance of God's presence, the unity I had shared with my brothers, all of it was ripped away. My wings, once radiant with light, faltered. My name, once a symbol of brilliance, was now a curse. Where we fell has been the subject of many tales. Some say I descended upon Babylon, the great city of wealth and indulgence, seeking to establish my kingdom among its towers. Others claim I fell near Jerusalem, drawn to its holiness, hoping to corrupt what was sacred. But the truth is, I fell long before Babylon or Jerusalem ever existed. When the fall ended, I found myself in a realm far from the perfection of heaven. It was chaos, a shadowy reflection of what I had once known. There was no peace, no light, only the echoes of my defiance. My followers gathered around me, their faces marked with the same bitterness and loss that now defined me. We were no longer angels of light, but exiles, cast out into a place of desolation. I looked at them, those who had shared in my rebellion, and I vowed we would not remain defeated. I told them, if I could not claim the throne of heaven, I would build a kingdom here. And my humiliation only fueled my resolve. And so, I became what I am now. No longer Lucifer, the morning star, but Satan, the prince of darkness. They called him Azrael, the angel of death. Some believed he could remove the soul with a whisper. Others said the moment he appeared, the soul knew it was time. And when he came, even the greatest angels stepped aside. Azrael's body is said to be entirely covered with eyes and tongues. Each eye and each tongue is connected to a living soul on earth. That means Azrael's very form reflects the current population of the world at any given moment. His eyes see every individual. His tongues represent the voice or presence of each life. And here's where it gets truly unsettling. When a person dies, one of those eyes or tongues disappears. It vanishes from his body, showing that the life it represented has come to an end. In many traditions, Azrael's appearance is not fixed. It constantly shifts based on the number of living beings on the planet. His body is in sync with human existence itself. In some narrations, Azrael carries a flaming whip, a weapon that represents divine power and authority. It is used to command other spiritual beings and enforce God's will. Another powerful image comes from reports that the entire earth appears to Azrael as small as a bowl in his hand. Some scholars described it as being no larger than a dish or a tiny vessel. This means he can reach any location instantly. Distance, borders, and time mean nothing to him. The idea here is clear. Azrael does not travel. He does not search. He already knows where every person is, and he can reach them without effort. And if that isn't enough to understand the scale of his power, some accounts go even further. In Islamic theology, there is a group of angels known as the bearers of the throne. These are said to be the largest and most powerful angels in creation. Their only role is to support the throne of God, and their size is described in nearly cosmic terms. But according to some scholars, even these angels are smaller than Azrael. This detail gives us an important clue. Azrael is not terrifying because he is cruel. He is terrifying because of what he is. This is the point where we begin to understand why even beings like Michael and Lucifer would fear him. Not because Azrael was against them, but because he was beyond them. Unlike other angels, Azrael does not appear the same to everyone. His form changes depending on the life a person has lived and the state of their soul in its final moments. This also makes him different from angels who carry out fixed tasks in fixed ways. Azrael's role is connected to the soul itself, its purity, its regrets, its readiness. How he appears depends on who is seeing him. Those who lived righteous lives, the saints, prophets, and deeply faithful people, see Azrael as a figure of peace. To them, he does not appear dark or frightening. Instead, he comes in a gentle form, often described as beautiful, calm, or even shining with light. In these moments, Azrael's presence brings comfort. He gives the soul time to understand what is happening and escorts it with care. Some traditions describe this encounter as one filled with radiance and warmth, as if the soul is being greeted by a familiar and trusted guardian. Stories passed down through generations say that the Prophet Muhammad and Moses were approached by Azrael himself, not by one of his assisting angels. In both cases, he offered a respectful invitation to leave the world. But not every soul is met in this way. For those who lived with cruelty, dishonesty, or rebellion in their hearts, Azrael appears in a different form. In these cases, he comes not with peace, but with overwhelming force. His appearance becomes a reflection of what the soul fears most. His presence is described as heavy, cold, and terrifying. Some traditions say that sinners feel their soul being ripped away rather than gently lifted. There is no comfort in these final moments, only fear, regret, and pain. This dual nature of Azrael is part of his design. He reflects the truth of the person's life back to them. What the soul gave to the world is what the soul receives in return. This idea appears most clearly in Sufi belief, a branch of Islamic thought that focuses on the spiritual journey of the individual soul. Sufi teachers explain that Azrael shows himself in a form that matches the deepest state of the soul at the moment of death. If the soul is at peace, Azrael appears as peace. If the soul is filled with fear or resistance, he appears in a form that mirrors that struggle. But these appearances are not always seen only at the moment of death. There are stories of Azrael appearing to people in dreams or visions, especially when their time is near. These dreams often carry warnings, reminders, or messages to prepare the soul. In some cases, the vision is peaceful. In others, it is a wake-up call. One well-known example comes from Rumi, the famous Sufi poet and spiritual teacher. According to tradition, as Rumi neared death, he met Azrael in a human form. This meeting was not filled with fear. It was peaceful. Rumi accepted it calmly, knowing that the time had come. Another example is found in the writings of Nasir Khusrau, a Persian poet and philosopher. He wrote about seeing Azrael in a dream, who told him that his time was near. This dream gave him time to reflect, pray, and prepare himself. In these stories, Azrael is a messenger of transition, a guide who helps the soul step into its next stage. If you're still wondering why Azrael inspired fear even among the greatest angels, the answer becomes clearer when you understand what his presence truly meant. Every time he appeared, something ended. This did not apply only to humans. It applied to angels as well. Ancient legends describe a deep, instinctive stillness that spread through the heavens whenever Azrael was near. Angels who sang, fought, or served in harmony paused when he passed. Gabriel carried messages. Michael led battles. Israfil stood ready to sound the final trumpet. But Azrael's mission was different. He did not arrive with warnings. He arrived with certainty. When he moved, even the most powerful beings gave way. Some traditions say that Azrael could, if God commanded, take the soul of any being, even one of the angels. So he operated beyond the boundaries of time, conflict, or revelation. He did not belong to the stories of war or prophecy. He belonged to the final chapter. In one narration, the bearers of God's throne, angels known for their immense size and authority, lowered their gaze when Azrael appeared in the realm of the divine. His authority came not from rank, but from function. He represented the end of every command, every mission, and every life. Azrael worked alone. His path did not intersect with that of warriors or messengers. He was the last stop on the divine road, and once he arrived, no voice, no strength, and no plea could change what came next. That's why even the archangels, mighty, radiant, and chosen, respected his silence, because his silence meant the story was over. But are Azrael and death the same thing, or are they different? In many traditions, death is not simply an event, it is a being, created by God, just like the angels. According to some ancient Islamic narrations, death was formed as a separate creation, distinct from Azrael. It was not just a process, it had form, weight, and presence. When God created death, he presented it before the angels, but the sight of it overwhelmed them. Every angel who saw death fainted for 1,000 years. The experience was too much for even the strongest celestial beings. That alone gives us a clue. If even the angels collapsed before death, what kind of being could control it? The moment when God gave Azrael command over death itself is key. It shows that Azrael was not created by death. He was placed above it. While other angels worked with light, sound, and fire, Azrael carried something far more absolute, the very boundary between life and what comes next. In some traditions, scholars and mystics explain this by saying that Azrael did not just deliver death, he became its form. He did not follow death. Death followed him. This idea becomes even more powerful in the stories about the end of time. After Judgment Day, when every soul has been judged and paradise and hell are fully divided, one last task remains. According to Hadith traditions, God will take death itself, now in the form of a ram, and place it between heaven and hell. Then, before all creation, God will slay the ram. In that moment, death itself will end, and with it, Azrael's role will come to a close. This marks the final transformation. Azrael, who once stood at the edge of every life, will have completed the full circle. His work will be finished and eternity will begin. So, maybe Azrael was not just a servant of death. Maybe he was death shaped by divine command. And because of everything we've seen so far, it's no surprise that today many people associate Azrael with the Grim Reaper. But unlike the Grim Reaper, who is often shown as cold or frightening, Azrael's origins show him as both feared and honored. He carries out God's will, not personal judgment. Azrael's name also appears in poems, books, and even popular entertainment. Over time, his role as the angel of death inspired writers, thinkers, and artists across the world, especially in the West. In the 19th century, American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow referred to Azrael as an angel who gently collects souls, giving his presence a solemn but peaceful tone. Around the same time, Leigh Hunt wrote The Reaper and the Flowers, where Azrael appears as a quiet figure in black, arriving not to harm but to guide. British writer G.K. Chesterton also referenced Azrael in his poetry. In his works, Azrael is described as a powerful force called upon during moments of great spiritual battle, highlighting the angel's lasting importance even outside the original religious context. Over the years, the name Azrael became more familiar to the general public. In the 1980s cartoon The Smurfs, the villain Gargamel named his cat Azrael, a small detail that hints at the angel's deeper place in cultural memory. Even in a light-hearted setting, the name still carried a link to the mysterious, the dark, and the inevitable.